Hey guys! Oh my god! I'm sorry. It's just funny. Um. Welcome back. This is History of Futurama Season 2, Episode 5 of my show, which is also going to be about Episode 5. But before I start talking about it, I just want to mention something. This is actually tied to what I... This is actually why I'm laughing right now. The episode's title is I Second That Emotion. And after seeing that, I remembered something from back when I was a kid. When I used to watch that Fairly Odd Parents TV show, when it was on TV before it got canceled, there was an episode on there called Emotion Commotion. Hold on. Okay. Oh. Anyway. It's an episode on there called Emotion Commotion, which was basically the episode where Timmy wished away he didn't have any emotions because of an embarrassing incident at this Dimsdale public swimming pool. Now the only reason I'm bringing that episode up is because of the name of the episode's title, and this one is I Second That Emotion, and just thinking about that kind of reminded me of that part. But that's the only thing I wanted to bring up. But anyway, getting into the actual storyline of this episode, basically what happens is, Leela is opening this can, this gigantic can of Kibbles and Snouts for Nibbler to basically snack on. And in order to do that, she's using the can opener. She uses the can opener, and then basically, after, when Nibbler hears the can opener machine opening the Kibbles and Snouts, he runs towards where the sound of it is, and then basically, and then when he shows up where Leela is, and he starts eating the snouts, she's like, "Aww, somebody likes snouts." And then basically what happens is, Bender basically walks in at that time as well, but because the can opener machine is on, its magnetic field sucks him in and starts cutting the top part of his head off, and he starts getting scared of it. Now the reason why he's scared of the can opener is actually a funny reason, because after the can opener cuts the top part of his head off, like not clean off, but cuts it off to the point where it's like a flap, like a hat kind of thing. He's like, "Ugh, you stupid can opener! You killed my father, and now you're back for me!" No, I'm not sure about the details because it was never explained, but I'm guessing the can opener machine must have killed Bender's father in the series prior to the events of when the series started, like before Fry got frozen and stuff like that. But that's just my opinion about that anyway. But anyway, basically what happens is, Bender is wondering, basically, Leela's wondering if Bender's okay, and then Bender basically says that, like, he's fine, but then he's like, "I'm fine, but I don't see why we have to keep that killing machine around to feed that stupid animal." And by stupid animal, in this case, he's referring to Nibbler. And then basically, Leela is telling Bender to not talk like that, and make up with Nibbler because of that, and then basically, what happens is, Bender and Nibbler try to hug to make up, and then what basically happens is, because of that, Nibbler bites into Bender and and then his butt gets hurt, and then basically, Leela then asks if he's okay, and then basically Bender thinks that he's talking about him because he's like, nothing a little wax won't fix. But she says that she's not talking about him. She means Nibbler in this case. And then when she opens the side of his mouth to see it, he's like, "Oh, poor baby, he chipped a fag." And then she starts kissing him. And then basically what happens is Bender gets annoyed by that, and he's like, "Hey, I got a busted ass here. I don't see anyone kissing it." And then basically Zoidberg is, I guess, kind of non-enthusiastically says, I think Zoidberg kind of takes it seriously because he's like, "Alright, I'm coming." So basically they take Nibbler to the veterinarian to get his tooth checked out because of what happened. And then basically the veterinarian, what happens is first, when they show up in the waiting room, there's all these different pet owners with different types of pets. There's even this cat-like person with a human for a pet. Now I'm gonna explain who that is in a later episode of the series. I just wanted to bring that up though. I say that because I'm gonna explain who those are later on, because I know there's an episode that features those two again, so I'm gonna explain who those characters are later when I get to the season that featured them, I mean. And basically, the vet is basically taking this woman out of his office with her two-headed dogs, and he reminds her that basically, he's like, "Remember, Rover gets the pill and Pepper gets the suppository." Now, the reason why he's saying that is because it's basically a two-headed dog that she has, which is kind of weird, to be perfectly honest. And then basically, after that person leaves, Leela takes Nibbler in to basically get his tooth checked out because of his getting chipped because of what happened with Bender. And then basically the vet says that he's just gonna lose Fang. It's an easy fix. So he goes to this other room to extract this tooth from a jaguar. And the funny thing when he's trying to extract the tooth from the jaguar is when he's doing that, he's fighting with the jaguar in order to get it. And in the next part of it, he comes back on and he's like, "Well, Jaguar didn't want to cooperate, but luckily he knocked one of my teeth out." So basically he couldn't get the Jaguar's tooth out of him in order to put it in Nibbler, but because of him fighting the Jaguar, a tooth of his got knocked out. So he basically used the tooth that got knocked out of him as Nibbler's replacement. And then basically, Fry takes a look at Nibbler's old tooth, and then he sees these rings on the tooth, and he asks, because he wonders what the rings are, and then the vet is saying that basically he's still woozy from a gazelle kick to the head this morning, but if the rings are any indication, if he's a human, if he's anything like a human, the rings might tell his age, basically. Like, and then basically Fry jokingly says that good luck in the take a genius to figure out how many rings there are, and then basically the vet says it is 5. I'm guessing because he noticed that there were 5 rings on it. So because basically the 2 that 5 rings on it, Nibbler is about 5 years old. And then basically the rest of the Planet Express crew are, well, actually, I'm just gonna backtrack to the part with the vet. When the vet was telling them about Nibbler missing a tooth, and before he got the replacement, Bender was sort of twisting what the doctor was saying, like he was misinterpreting it, like he said that, "What the doctor? You're gonna have to put him down?" And then basically, the vet said that he didn't know what he was talking about and stuff. I'm just backtracking to that part since it's a minor part that I skipped over, but I figured I'd mention it now before I started talking about this portion of the episode. Basically, the Planet Express crew are basically celebrating Nibbler's 5th birthday in the episode, and basically what happens is Professor Farnsworth is telling Nibbler happy birthday, and they got these presents out for him, and then basically then they start singing this weird happy birthday tune that goes like this. What day is today? It's Nibbler's birthday. What a day for a birthday. Let's all have some cake. And then Fry jokingly adds in the song, "You smell like one too," which is funny because in some birthday song stuff, people do that sometimes where they do something too and stuff like that. Like, oh my god, I'm sorry, I just had to bring that up. That's hilarious. And then Nibbler starts chewing on a spoon while he's wearing his birthday hat, and then basically Bender's still getting annoyed that the rest of the crew are not paying attention to him. But then Leela mentions that isn't he supposed to be baking a cake for Nibbler's birthday party? And then he's like, "So it's a cake you want, is it? I'll make you a cake you'll never forget." And then this is the part of the episode that when I first watched it on TV, and when I first watched it on Netflix, back when it was on TV, I kind of thought, and I think everyone else thought of this, because basically what happened was in the next scene, Bender goes into this kitchen cabinet to get the rat poison out. Now, I think back when I watched it, and when it was, like I said, back when I watched it when it was on TV, I thought he was going to put rat poison in the cake. But it turned out that it wasn't. He was just using it to kill the rats that were causing the kitchen some trouble, which is good. But I actually, at first, when I first watched this episode on TV, and after watching it once on Netflix, on Disney Plus, I actually thought that same thing again. So if anyone thinks the same thing I did when they watched this episode when it was on TV and stuff, if they thought the same thing when they saw this episode, just leave a comment in the comment box of what you thought of it. If you've watched it and seen this episode, if you watched it for the first time and you saw that scene and you thought that he was going to put rat poison in the cake and stuff, and it turned out it wasn't. I just wanted to bring it up since I mentioned it, because that is something that I feel is something I feel I should mention before I continue with the episode. And basically what happens is when Bender's putting the rat poison where the rats are. He's like, that ought to take care of those annoying rats. And then he says that now that the rats are taken care of, he'll make a cake for Nibbler that'll be so good they'll have to respect him. And then basically he manages to finish baking the cake, and then basically what happens is he's like, there, now all I have to do is spell check it and it'll be ready for my adoring public. But he steps away from the cake for a minute, and that's when Nibbler enters the kitchen, and then Bender turns back to where the cake is so that he can spell check it, but by the time he tries to spell check it, what happens is Nibbler starts to eat it, and then Bender doesn't want him to eat it before he spell checks it to bring it out, but he manages to eat the cake, and then Bender gets annoyed with Nibbler to the point where he's like, that's it. And then he takes Nibbler to the bathroom, to one of the bathrooms in the building, and where the toilet is, and he holds him over the toilet, and he's like, happy birthday! And he drops him in the toilet, and then flushes him down the toilet. Oh my god! I'm sorry. I am sorry. That's so hilarious, though. He flushed him down the toilet. And, well, it's actually funny in a... Like, it is sort of funny, but it's kind of dark if you think about it, because it's kind of mean for him to do that. Especially because of the fact that what happens is, after that happens, Leela comes in to talk to Bender, and then she realizes that Bender is flushing Nibbler down the toilet, and then basically, when she sees that, she's like, no, and then Bender's like, hey, can't you see I'm trying to use the can here? And then basically, in the next scene, Leela continues crying because of Nibbler being flushed down the toilet, and Amy gets upset with Bender about that because she asks him how could he flush Nibbler down the toilet, and then he mentions that first he had to lift up the seat. That was the first annoyance. And then basically Leela says it doesn't have any feelings at all. How would he feel if she flushed Fry down the toilet? And he says that they'll find out. And then she says that he has no sympathy for anyone else's feelings, but Bender says that he does. Right now he feels sorry for you. But Bender says that he does. Right now he feels sorry for her. And then she says he does. And then he's like, yeah, I mean, one cantaloupe-sized bloodshot eye. You ain't winning any beauty pageant, honey. And then basically he goes into the living room part of the office to watch the TV, and then basically the rest of the Planet Express crew are basically having this funeral for Nibbler in the toilet, and then basically in that funeral, basically Farnsworth said, so we say goodbye to our beloved pet Nibbler, who's gone to the one place I too hope soon to go, the toilet. And then they put a white rose flower in the toilet, and then 5 foot of white rose flower in the toilet, and then Hermes, after he gives a nod to Hermes flushes the toilet, and then basically Leela said sadly that she wouldn't feel so bad if Bender would only understand the pain that he caused her. And then basically Bender's watching this news program, and then he starts laughing at the misfortune of some of the people that are mentioned in the news report. And then basically Amy says that it's like Bender doesn't know anything about human emotions. And then Farnsworth's like, actually, through the miracle of science, that can be arranged. But then after he says that, Fry gets a little worried because he's like, uh-oh, is this gonna be another mad experiment that crosses a line that mankind was not meant to cross? And then basically Farnsworth doesn't say anything, but what he does is he does this little finger motion to say that it somewhat is. Now basically what the experiment is that they're doing with Bender is they're placing an empathy chip inside of him, making him feel human emotions. Oh my god. Oh, I'm sorry. I just gotta laugh about that because that's hilarious. And then basically, what happens is they take Bender hostage, and then they screw off his head, and then he wonders what the professor's doing with his head, and he says that he needs to tinker in it. And then Bender says that I can't remember what he said about that afterward, but why not keep that on the body? And then basically, Farnsworth said that he's telling Bender to be quiet because he's installing an empathy chip, and then Fry basically asks the professor if that'll allow him to feel other people's emotions, and the professor basically, I think both sarcastically and literally, he says, because the next sentence he said to Fry is, yes, if by allow you mean force. And then basically he starts tinkering in Bender's head, installing the empathy chip and using a hammer on it to get it into place. And then after he gets the empathy chip in place, he tries to tune into Leela's emotional frequency, but the first two times it messes up because it makes him act like Zoidberg. The first one makes him act like Zoidberg, and the second time makes him act like Amy. And the third time is when it starts acting like Leela, because the third time it happens, he's like, this time I miss Nibbler, and I'm feeling nosy and opinionated. And in terms of, I'm just going to explain a small detail. When he was Zoidberg, what happened was he was saying that he was feeling a strong urge to cram his gullet full of mackerel heads. And basically, and when he was tuned to Amy's emotional frequency, he was like, no, I'm worried that I'm not as smart as Leela, but at the same time, I feel relieved that I'm sort of cuter than her, which was Amy's case. And then that leads into the one with Leela, and then after they're saying, first Amy says bingo, and then the rest of them are saying that's Leela, and then basically Leela's thanking the professor because she hopes that now Bender can understand the pain that he caused her because of the empathy chip. And then basically what happens is, first what happens is they're doing these, basically, after that, Leela and Amy are going out for a drink, and then, Leela's basically somewhat not depressed about Nibbler anymore, and then basically Amy said that what might cheer her up is that they could get a puppy, but after she hears the puppy party, she's like, a puppy? Nibbler loved to eat puppies, and then basically she starts crying, and because of the empathy chip in Bender, he starts crying as well, and then Fry wonders why he's crying, and then he says that it's because he misses Nibbler, and then Fry says that he does, but then Bender's like, hell no, it's Leela's stupid emotions. Why can't she just drink herself happy like a normal human? Oh my god. And then basically what happens is after that, and then basically what happens after that is, Leela's, Amy's telling Leela that this guy that she met, Armando, is going on to his car, are going out to his car for a bit, and she wonders if she wants to come with them. But she said she'll be fine. They shouldn't have a good time together, she'll be fine on her own. And then basically, in the next little bit of the scene, what happens is Leela starts getting angry with Amy, which causes her to get jealous. And then when she starts feeling jealous because of the empathy chip that the professor installed in Bender, he gets worried about it. He's like, uh-oh, jealousy. But since Amy's not there, he takes out his version of Leela's jealousy out on Fry, because he's like, you think you're so hot? And then he's like, what? The only reason you get older, guys, is because you dress like a tramp. And then he only expresses how he feels. And then basically, after that, what happens is, in the next scene, they're back at, the Planet Express building, and Leela's still upset about what happened to Nibbler, and then Bender's saying that he can't, stand another minute without poor, cute, sweet Nibbler, and then basically, Fry mentions that it's too bad Nibbler wasn't an alligator, because apparently the urban legend with alligators is if you flush them down the toilet, they live on in the sewers. And then basically when Bender hears that part of it, he decides to flush himself down the toilet to rescue Nibbler, but because he's too big to fit in the toilet, he takes the parts of his body off, like his head and his arms and his head off his body, and the body flushes him down the toilet. And as he's going down the drain from the toilet, he's telling his body, see you on the other side! And then the body goes to leave, but as he's about to, Fry is knocking on the door, so the body also flushes itself down the toilet. And then when Fry's knocking on the door, he's asking Bender to be seen as sombrero. And then when Fry tells Leela that, she's like, now he's flushed himself down the toilet. Who's gonna flush next? And then Fry basically tells her that it's her fault that Bender flushed himself, which is technically true, because he said that he only flushed himself because her emotions made him feel bad, which is technically true because of the empathy chip the professor installed and is tuned to Leela's frequency. The emotions of sadness and grief that she was feeling from Nibbler getting flushed down the toilet were too much for Bender to handle, and it made him feel bad to the point that he flushed himself. So in a sense, it's her fault that he flushed himself down the toilet to rescue Nibbler in the first place. If the empathy chip hadn't been placed in him, then he wouldn't have flushed himself to rescue Nibbler. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get agitated by the plot of the episode. I just wanted to make that portion, I just wanted to mention that portion to get my own opinion of that portion of the episode out. And then basically, Leela says that she feels terrible, and then basically, when Fry hears that, he's like, oh great, now you're making him feel worse! And then they say that they gotta go down there and rescue him. And then they say that they can't, basically, Amy says that they can't go down there because there's mutants down in the sewer, and then Zoidberg's like, they're hideous! And then Leela says that there's no such thing as mutants, they're an urban legend, and then basically, Farnsworth says that she's not supposed to be so sure about that, because many people do believe that humans could mutate down there due to the mix of toxic runoff, many diseases, and good old American feces. And then basically Fry's like, God bless America. And then they go down into the sewer to find Nibbler, and then basically when they go down to find him, when they go down to find him, they manage to find Bender, and Bender's putting himself back together, and while he's putting himself back together, he's like, oh, I shouldn't have thrown out the manual. And then Leela says that to Bender that he didn't have to flush himself down the toilet, and he says that he knows that, but he couldn't just stand another minute without cute, sweet Nibbler, and they both start crying and stuff, and then, because they were trying to find Bender up to this point, and then they found him, and then basically Fry said that this emotion, this display of emotion is supposed to come out, or it's whatever that is, and then basically they go to where this pipe is, and then Fry is telling them that according to the map, the only way out is through that pipe. And they're looking at him and sort of stupidly, and he's like, because he's an idiot, and he's like, but don't worry, it gets sort of as you go up, and then basically Leela and Bender both call him an idiot because of Leela called him an idiot, and Bender called him an idiot because he's got the empathy chip inside of him, which is tuned to her emotions, so he basically says what she says at that point. And then basically then they manage to come upon some mutants, and then after that what happens is, after they start being friendly with them, and after they talk a little bit, basically Fry and Leela and Bender try to defend themselves from the mutants, but they don't attack them because one of the mutants says that they said that they shouldn't be frightened by them because they're harmless, and this 3-armed mutant is like, I have 3 arms, and then the one with the big head is like, the big forehead is like, I said harmless, not armless. And then the female frog-like mutant is like, lay off him, you know he's only got 1 ear. Which is actually kind of funny. And then basically, they mention that they're from they see the mutants, and they're wondering about that, and then basically, the giant forehead, like they're saying that mutants, perhaps they're the mutants, but they say that they're up top, but perhaps they are the mutants of a society that lives higher above them, and then Fry says that they're up top, and then the mutant with the green skin and the like pig snout is like, she's saying that it must be beautiful up top, and then basically Bender's like, but then Leela tells them that basically they actually came down here because they were trying to find their pet Nibbler because he got flushed down the toilet. And then the 3-armed mutant is basically saying, well, if he got flushed down the toilet, he probably passed through here. Everything always passes through here, which makes sense because it's the sewer. So they take them to where their village is, and then basically they're showing them the different parts of their society that once also belonged to the humans up top before it got flushed, and they're basically giving them a tour. And then basically when they come upon this church, Fry gets surprised by that, and he's like, wow, you guys worship an unexploded nuclear bomb. But the mutant with the green skin and the pig snout is saying that basically no one actually bothers about it. It's just like a Christmas and Easter kind of thing, which is true because a lot of people can get religious around both Christmas and Easter. So anyway, and then then Fry mentions about the thing about the alligators, and then basically, the frog mutant that's talking to tells them that that's just that's just a myth anyway, and they say that they actually have a thing called crocodiles. Now, crocodiles and alligators are sort of the same thing, except the difference between crocodiles and alligators is crocodiles apparently have a V-shaped snout, like a V-shaped nose kind of thing. And then the three-armed mutant basically says that they keep the crocodiles as pets, but when they get too big, they flush them down into the sub-sewer. And then the big-headed mutant is saying that basically, some say that there's a horrible race of sub-mutants down there, and then basically the female mutant is saying that that's just a suburban legend, and then the big-headed mutant is saying that she also believed the legend of El Chupanibrea, and then basically, Leela wonders what El Chupanibrea is, and then the big-headed mutant is playing his guitar and explaining the legend of El Chupanibrea, and then basically, after, he mentions the alligator part, but the frog-like mutant with the pig snout says the crocodile, and then Leela says that her pet Nibbler loves crocodiles, it's his favorite treat, and he said that he must be the El Chupanibrea, and then the mutants get upset about that they brought the dreaded El Chupanibrea upon them. So to them that makes them their sworn enemies, and then they're wondering how that they can deal with El Chupanibrea, and then basically the big forehead mutant is saying that it's impossible. If the legend is true, the only way to appease El Chupanibrea is to give him a sacrifice, which is an unspoiled human female virgin, and then Leela says that she'll do it, but then the frog mutant with the big snout is saying that nice try, but they all saw that Flanagan's webpage. But the three-armed mutant says that she'll have to do, and then he tells them to chain her to the post and rip her shirt a little. And basically, what happens is what they do is they just tear it a little bit. Like, they don't tear it like clean off, just tear it just a little bit. And basically, what happens is, the big hidden mutant is saying that basically they, the big headed mutant is saying that, El Chupanibrea is near soon, will be near soon, it's nightfall, and then Leela wonders, how can they tell it's nightfall down here? And then they go into their houses in the sewers, and then basically what happens is, because of that, they all hide from what they think is El Chupanibrea, and then basically Nibbler shows up, and then Bender goes to hug Nibbler, and he's like, Nibbler, come here, precious. Oh, look, everyone, it's El Chupanibrea. But then the big headed mutant is like, that's not El Chupanibrea. And then he's like, say, come again? And then Bender's like, come again? That's El Chupanibrea. And then it's basically this giant, like, green frog creature. And then basically, afterward, Bender runs from it, and then basically, and the El Chupanibrea creature starts attacking Nibbler, and then basically Leela gets scared because of that, and then because of the empathy chip inside Bender, he starts to get scared by it, and then Fry's like, Leela, your scaredness is being transmitted straight to Bender. If you care about Nibbler, then stop caring stop. And then she says that she can't because she loves every living creature. Well, I'm just going to backtrack because they actually use this rope trap on to catch El Chupanibrea, and in the part of this episode, Fry's already tied up because of the rope trap. I just wanted to backtrack to that part, and then basically Fry is getting back into what I was saying, Fry is telling Leela that if she cares about Nibbler, then stop caring about him, and then she said that she can't because she loves every living creature, and then he says even him, he asks her even him, and then basically she says that's a friend, and then he gets upset about that, and then basically Bender is saying that he's telling Leela that he's an expert about not caring. The secret is not giving a damn what other people think, and start thinking about what she wants, what she cares about for herself, and what the world owes her. And then basically after making some remarks about what she would want and stuff, she mentions about she would be able to afford it if she didn't have to feed that stupid Nibbler. And then basically because of that, Bender starts fighting the Chupanibrea and rescuing Nibbler. And then after that, because basically during that point, Fry is still tied up to the rope trap, and then basically Leela says that, you know what else she would like, and then she says about some other stuff, and then Bender manages to knock the El Chupanibrea into the toilet that leads to the sub-sewer, and then the big-headed mutant is basically saying that he's trying to tell the legend of Bender, and then basically, but before he starts, while he's playing the guitar string, he snaps one of the guitar strings for his guitar snaps, and he's like, oh, it's gonna be a long time before anyone flushes another guitar string. And then they go back, then it goes back to the part where they're on the surface, and then Leela is telling Bender that she's happy that he was able to save Nibbler, and then he says that he's happy too, and then he's trying to talk like himself to the professor, because he's like, get this stupid chip out of me before I kill myself! And then he takes the chip out, and then he tells Bender that he's not going to believe this, but the empathy chip burned out. The emotions that he felt for Nibbler were his own. But it seemed, so they think that he's learned his lesson because of that, but then the professor mentions that he was wrong. The empathy chip was still working at triple the capacity. And then Bender says that he still hasn't learned anything, and he said goodbye and called them losers. And then basically Leela says that Bender may not have learned anything from her, but she learned something from him, and she says so long jerk was. And then basically after Professor Farnsworth says so long, that's basically where this episode stops. So if you guys like this video when I post it, just please give this video the real best you guys can. And I will see you guys next time for the next Futurama video. But until then, guys, like I always tell you with this series, fun on a bun!